Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to welcome all of you to this afternoon's call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to quickly through these calls, bottom line, the information that we have for you. We know you're busy people and you have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the revaluation primarily of the Iraqi dinar and these other currencies. We spend a few minutes rather redundantly reviewing the program we've put into place to assist you, and then we go ahead and have a brief Q&A. So let's just go ahead and get started by discussing the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the purchase or the sale of these currencies, but we are merely sharing with you the information that we feel is relevant as we are substantial currency holders ourselves. The first point of order would be the Iraqi dinar. We do believe that the window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar still remains the first quarter of this year. The reinstitution of the currency could have happened in January, and we'll get into that. It did not for reasons that I will explain, but we still feel that the reinstitution of the currency is quite possible in the first quarter. So let's start by talking about what exactly is going on in Iraq. We know that the 2019 budget was passed and effective as of this last Monday, just 2 days ago. We know that at some point in the near future, the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar must occur as part and parcel of the budget is providing funds for the reconstruction in country, but would require payment for these international contractors, and that ultimately at some point must require the reinstitution of their currency. Now, the CBI did attempt, in fact, the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar not once but twice in the month of January, but it was held up by the NSA in the United States for a couple of reasons. First, the United States wanted to ensure that we would have, at least for the time being, a permanent and substantial military force in Iraq. This would include not only roving U.S. Armed groups, but it would also have to do with the rather large military installation in Kurdistan, as well as a substantial military force in the Green Zone. The other reason is to ensure that there would be no payments to Iran with the U.S. dollar, which would be a violation of our international sanctions with Iran. And thirdly, we want to check the Iranian military militias that are still running around, as well as some of the Shia members of the parliament that are attempting in every way possible to obstruct what's trying to be accomplished here, which is the establishment of an independent Iran, separate and apart from Iranian influence. Now, to that end, the CBI and the government of Iraq have entered into an agreement that they will not be using the U.S. dollar to service their debt, which is a good thing and which helps facilitate the reinstitution of their currency. Unfortunately, the UN is attempting to coerce Iraq into utilizing the U rather than reinstituting their currency. And this is also a mechanism for them to try to circumvent the sanctions against Iran. Now, why would the UN be trying to undercut the United States? For a very simple reason. The unelected kleptocrats in Brussels are hell-bent on establishing one world government order, but there's a problem. The sole superpower in the world, the United States, is simply not going to submit our sovereignty to this unelected group of kleptocrats. And so they're trying to undercut the United States by replacing it as a gold reserve currency with the euro. Now, fortunately, President Trump, unlike his predecessor, has drawn a red line and said very simply, if you attempt to do this, you are making a choice. You will either be able to do business with the United States of America, which is now the largest single importer of international crude and natural gas, with an annual economy of approximately $18 trillion, or you can do business directly or indirectly with Iran with an annual economic growth of about $400 million. So I do think that the United States will prevail, but it unfortunately will take just a little bit of time. The advantage, or the objective rather, for not using the U.S. dollar and prohibiting it, another positive effect in Iraq as well. And that is one of the largest, if not the largest source of revenue to the banks, is the profit from the spread of the auction of the dinar against the U.S. dollar. So with that off the table, since the U.S. dollar will not be permitted in transactions internationally, means that the banks are going to have to look to other sources of revenue. This refers to the expansion of the private and the de-evolution of the centralized command and control government that they did have. So now, in order to achieve profit margins, the banks are going to have to make loans to new and expanding businesses, are going to help prop up their stock market, the sale of their stocks in country, and grow their private sector as they shrink the public sector. So unfortunately, things have gotten a little bit complicated in the transition. This is not completely unexpected. But again, the CBI has attempted the reinstitution of their currency in country twice in the month of January. And so it would make sense that they would attempt to do this again in this first quarter. And so long as we have a stable U.S. force presence in Iraq, and so long as we've been able to check the Iranian militias and some of the Iranian sympathetic officials in government, we could see the reinstitution of the currency in this first quarter. Now, having said that, that does permit additional time for individuals to get their affairs in order prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So for those of you that may not know what that involves, Trusts Unlimited has put into place a turnkey program to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your pre-RV currencies to that trust package. Phase 2 is post-RV, which is access to all of the professionals, referrals, and services that would be available to you after the revaluation of these currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, which is the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. And again, the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Very simply, a trust is a legal instrument one can establish to hold, to manage, and to protect assets. Trust can fall into some basic categories. For example, a trust can be revocable or it can be irrevocable. In order to have the asset protection you're going to need and want, you're going to need to establish a package of irrevocable trusts, and that package must be established prior to the revaluation of these currencies for the following reasons. First, by establishing this trust package and assigning your currencies on paper to that trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. Because assets held within an irrevocable trust are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title, once they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit will be time-consuming, it will be frustrating, and frankly, it would probably cost you more than an asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your trust is in place pre-RV and your currencies have been assigned to that trust, you have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an audit if the revaluation were to occur within our trust package. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you're planning on gifting currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies prior to their revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be done outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, then you can gift to them through our trust package. We have created a special gift subtrust to facilitate this gift. By gifting through this gift subtrust, you will avoid the 40% federal gift tax. The language of the subtrust will allow you to gift up to a certain amount or currencies, which means you can gift to them the exact post-RV U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But because you're gifting through the trust, not only will their USD be protected along with yours, but you will then be able to manage, invest, and distribute those funds to those individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this asset protection trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you 2 quick scenarios. Scenario number 1, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now, that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process. The general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie your estate up for years and even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax, the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would be exempt from the federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Scenario number 2. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies were valued for $25 million. The day after that, leaving your heirs that same estate of $25 million, but this time in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV asset protection trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer those currencies to our trust package. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, living rather comfortably, and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have very deep pockets and a very strong case, because this trust package is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once this prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could win by way of a civil award would be the value of the property at the time you transferred it to the trust, $5,000, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is how it would work. Again, we'll use the same example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million, and now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, why is this important from a legal and asset protection point of view? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is very important. All of your other assets are safely protected in other subtrusts. Now, why are those assets protected in those other subtrusts? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities not associated with the owner of the car that you were driving, and as such, the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue those entities. So your trust package works very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your asset protection trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection packages, then you will be able to participate in Phase 2, post-RV, all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of these currencies. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages post-RV. Many of our existing clients have requested the establishment of scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts after the revaluation of these currencies. And the proper way to fund those entities is by transferring funds directly from your asset protection pre-RV trust to those newly formed entities. Our tax specialists will be there to assist you with tax issues. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate future taxes on the reinvestment of the net proceeds from the revaluation itself. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after this revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So you're going to get money out of the banks and it work in other markets as quickly as possible. And third, the general global shift from fiat-based to commodity-backed Basel III compliant currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets. And you're going to want to reposition a substantial amount of your assets into the tangible arenas. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV and then hold financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV. One optional gift sub-trust if you plan on gifting currencies to friends and family through our trust, which sub-trust can at some later date be converted to a standard sub-trust, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. This was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But because that trust package will not be funded pre-RV, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000, making it affordable for denarians. There are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, We'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would just basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the necessity of getting their trust package in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be substantially less than the $100 a month that you would pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place prior to the revaluation of these currencies for the reasons that I've stated here. Now, we will be going to a Q&A in just a moment, but again, for the benefit of our newer callers and those that will be listening to our replay, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in these areas. And I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for about 10 years in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. And it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, it's just the reverse. It's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death, and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you anticipate a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. Again, I'd like to thank you for taking time to listen to this call. I hope it's been informative. If you're interested in what you've heard today, I invite you to contact us and get our initial package. When I get to our Q&A, have a pencil and paper ready. I'll be giving you our contact information. You're under absolutely no obligation whatsoever by getting our initial package, even though it includes everything you need if you should decide to establish a pre-RV asset protection trust. The package has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the revaluation. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, and there will be no consultation fee. Again, We're doing everything we can to provide the information you need so that you can make an informed decision, get your affairs in order and your trust in place prior to the evaluation of these currencies. I'm going to open the Q&A here in a second. When I do, 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We take no service calls on the Q&A. This is provided for those individuals that are not clients, that do not have a trust package and have questions about how to proceed. And second, obviously, you cannot participate in the Q&A if your name and number are not on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you're kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD Calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last 2 digits. Rather than dialing 40, you can dial 39 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394#. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out periodically pre-RV, but after the revaluation of these currencies, valuable information may go out via email as often as daily. So let's go ahead to our Q&A. Our first question is from area code 806. That's 806. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. This is Josh in Texas. How are you?
Yes, sir. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Hey, I just had 2 quick questions I think would be interesting to everybody. The first one is, could you shed a little bit more light on how you and some of your clients were involved in the Kuwaiti deal back in the early 90s and how maybe that was handled by the IRS back then?
Well, the Kuwaiti deal was a little bit different than this simply because of the magnitude and because of the circumstance. The situation with Kuwait went on for about 18 months. This is going on since 2003 in Iraq. And also, the Kuwaiti deal did not straddle the Basel III issues involved here. So the Kuwaiti deal in terms of leverage was nothing like this. We're talking the Kuwaiti deal where people were able to purchase the Kuwaiti dinar for as little as a nickel and were able to exchange it for as much as $7. Now, the interesting thing about the Kuwaiti deal is, and it's kind of strange, it's kind of counterintuitive. Actually, as many people lost money in that deal as made money, because what happened was when the Kuwaiti dinar revalued, again, because it was over a relatively short period of time, it came back at over $3. As I recall, it bumped up to as much as $7 or $8. A lot of people bought in at $5, $6, $7, and then within a matter of weeks, it was down between $3 and $4. So my involvement in it was virtually nothing in terms of the amount that I invested compared to what I'm doing with the Iraqi dinar. But it's the same basic formula, i.e. there was an invasion or there's an internal strife. The currency became non-functional. The IMF came in and put it under a program rate. The issue got resolved. They got pulled out of the program rate, and then they revalued. So that deal was sort of a microcosm of the Iraqi deal. As to the taxes, to be honest with you, I cannot remember what the deal was. However, I was in for such a short period of time, I paid ordinary income. Now, interestingly, Section 988.2 of the Internal Revenue Code, along with Section 525, referred to the gain from the exchanges as cap gain, which suggests that if the currencies are held outside of the trust, they'll be treated long-term, short-term gain. Section 643B of the code says that if the exchange occurs within an irrevocable trust like ours, the gain would be tax deferred. However, we cannot rely on the IRS, unfortunately, due to the United States versus Caterpillar decision 1978, which basically says that the IRS, the Treasury Department, can unilaterally, on a de facto basis, reinterpret a statute. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Hopefully, if the code remains intact and the IRS and the Treasury honor what the code states, our physical possession of the currency means it's a capital asset, means that gains a capital gain outside of a trust, but more importantly, if it's within a trust, it's going to be tax deferred. But we're going to have to wait and see on that one.
That's interesting. Thank you. And can I ask you one more question back on the trust subject?
Sure, certainly.
How do wealthy families that don't have the luxury of knowing their assets are going to substantially appreciate get their the same type of asset protection that we might get if this does happen? I mean, say they are a farming family, or they whatever, they had some stock that appreciated over the years and they're just now wealthy, and how do they get their assets protected in the same manner that we're trying to do it if they can't get that lower value into the trust before the asset appreciates dramatically?
Well, there is actually no way. They need to get the asset in trust and out of direct title prior to appreciation. That is why we established the deferred payment arrangement, because we had a great many people contact us and say, look, I have dinar. Frankly, I went out on a limb and purchased more dinar than I should have. I'm not a wealthy person. I don't have the cash flow. I can't afford the $3,000 up front or even the $2,500. That's why we established the deferred payment arrangement. Beyond that, I mean, we're doing everything we can to help these individuals, but, they're just going to have to find a way to establish the trust and get the currencies in trust prior to the appreciation. Now, this isn't just something for the currencies. This would have to do with pretty much any asset, whether it be stock, whether it be real estate. People have, for example, real estate options that they know are going to become very valuable. They want to hold on to the property or exercise the option. They want to get it in trust before it appreciates.
Very good. Hey, I appreciate your answers, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 314. That's 314. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Joel.
Joel, you.
Have you seen, do you feel like if they try to, the CBI tries something this month, that here in the United States things are changed, or people are getting along better, or what do you think? What do you see things being different this month than was last month?
Well, I think that last month there was still some concern about the status of forces in Iraq. Partially, it's our own internal thing. When Trump talked about removing troops, he was talking about Syria and Afghanistan, but it did concern some people that there might be a reduction of the troops, again, in Kurdistan and in the Green Zone in Iraq. He reaffirmed in his speech last night that the military troops in Iraq are not going anywhere and that the Iranian militias were on notice. So that clarification is probably going to be helpful as well. He's also, since then, kind of reiterated to the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels that the European nations, and right now there's three nations, there's France, there's Germany, and there's England, that have basically signaled they intend on doing business with Iran. And Trump has reiterated, do so at your own peril, because you can deal with them or you can deal with us. You can't do both. So I think that this thing's going to resolve itself, and I do think that we have a distinct possibility of getting the reinstitution in the first quarter. Obviously, I would love to have seen it in January. Whenever there's a major change in the status quo, no matter what you're talking about, we always have situations like this occur. Hopefully, though, we're back online and this thing can get wrapped up in this quarter. I'd certainly love to see it. I'm growing weary of these calls myself, and I'd love to be talking about something else, like how to properly invest and protect the wealth that we will accumulate after we leave the banks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area 415. That's 415. 405. Go ahead.
Thank you again. I appreciate it. I have a question about Basel III. You had mentioned it several times in the last couple of calls, and as I've researched it myself, is it in fact a process by which over time nations will rid themselves of a fiat-based financial system into an asset-backed system? Is that correct? And after that, I have a follow-up question, please.
Yes. Actually, Basel III, there's actually 5 stages. There's Basel 1 through 5. We're right at Basel III. Basically, what they're saying is over time, rather than having currencies backed by the full faith and credit of the respective governments, they will be commodity-backed, which is defined as the known natural resources in a given country and their ability to bring those resources to market within 5 years. So that's where we stand with Basel III. Now, another advantage to Basel III also is that it's going to limit countries like China, for example, from artificially devaluing their currency in order to corner international markets for the sale and trade and exchange of their goods and services. So that's the objective of a Basel III. The reason that's advantageous for the Iraqi dinar, and I've discussed this on numerous occasions, is, in my personal opinion, Iraq may be the richest country per square mile in natural resources. So Basel III compliance works very well for the long-term Basel III compliant value, commodity-backed value of the Iraqi dinar.
Is there a time frame that they expect this to happen as far as countries becoming compliant with this phase of Basel?
Probably. I kind of don't pay too much attention to timetables because they always tend to push them back. They try to use timetables to coerce or inspire people to accomplish what needs to get accomplished. But then when they get near the end, they extend the time frame. A good example would be what's going on in the EU, where Germany has back loans to, say, Greece, to Portugal, to Ireland, to other countries, and they continue to kind of forgive and give them more time to pay back the loans and things like that. So I kind of don't pay too much attention to the timetable, but we are nevertheless moving to commodity-backed currencies, which in the long run is going to be better for everyone.
Would that mean that our currency, basically a Federal Reserve note, would change into some other definition, maybe like a U.S. Treasury bill or something of that nature? Take it out of the Federal Reserve?
The new notes are supposed to be backed, but it's interesting that every time there's a vote in Congress to audit the Fed and audit our gold and precious metals reserves, they block it. That annoys me greatly. I think we should know precisely what's going on. One of the things that has been happening is that the United States has oil credits with Iraq for the purchase of their oil at $32 a barrel. So if oil is worth, I don't know what today's price is, let's say it's $65. Theoretically, we could purchase oil, $32, turn around and sell it on the open market for $65. The other thing we're doing by producing so much oil ourselves is putting downward pressure on the global price of oil, so you would think we're being undercut. But the United States is doing something else. We're selling those oil credits to China for $36. Now, why would we be selling our $32 oil credit to China for $36 when we could get $65 on the open market? Well, the answer is China's paying us in gold. Well, why is that important to us? Obviously, we're trying to prop up our gold holdings so that we can back our own currency. So there's a lot going on a lot of levels.
Very interesting. You mentioned that there were 2 attempts by Iraq in January to try to get the CBI to initiate a reinstatement of the value of the dinar, but it was blocked. What is the mechanisms? Why is it that they are not being able to self-govern or self-determine the value of their currency?
Because it's part of the liberation agreement that they had with the United States and the other forces that liberated Iraq, that they were going to have to get their house in order before they reinstituted their currency. Now, they've pretty much checked all of the boxes that they needed to check. But unfortunately, the situation evidently, I don't know whether I agree with it or not, but evidently the Trump administration is very concerned with what's going on in Iran. They're very serious about the implementation of these global sanctions against Iran. They're even threatening our own allies who are trying to circumvent and undercut that, and they want to make sure that the undue and unwanted Iranian influence in Iran stops in Iraq. And so basically what they're saying to Iraq, until you lance that boil and get Iran out of your internal affairs, we're going to hold this off. Hopefully, Iraq has gotten the message. They're going to make sure that these Iranian militia running around are feckless and that they're not going to have any more influence. And remember, Iraq is primarily Shia. Most of those Shia are moderate Shia, but there are still some radical Shia who are aligned with Iran, and some of them are in Congress and in their parliament, and because they're a parliamentary system, there are certain accommodation that has to be made. So I just think that we're flexing our muscle and saying we want to make sure that Iran has as close to zero influence in Iraq as possible, and that's what's going on, in my opinion.
You mentioned that when we leave the banks, post-RV, when you listen to all the other people on the Internet, they're talking about 800 number notifications. And I was thinking, if this is a worldwide event, why is it so? Why would it come down to the point where there would have to be an 800 number issued? I don't understand that, and I was wondering if that is accurate information, or this will be such an event of magnitude that we won't even need to have that. It'll just be known.
Well,
and I'm talking about
first of all, I put very little stock in what the gurus say. I try to be careful in any prognostications. I don't claim to be the Oracle of Delphi. Anyone that tells you that they know exactly what's going to happen is either a liar or a fool. Now, where the 800 numbers are concerned, any bank that does international currency work already has international currency department with an 800 number. What a lot of the gurus are talking about are 800 numbers for these groups that are supposedly going to get preferential treatment, contract rates, reductions in the transactions cost for exchanges, and etc. I put very little stock in that. I'm not saying that some of that's not possible, but any group that says to me, gee, you can be part of our group, but you got to surrender your currency, I just hang up the phone. I'm not interested in what they have to say. So any bank that does international currency work, another issue that could happen at the banks is they're going to have to take your currency and have it verified somewhere else. Don't go, just walk out, take your currency with you. If you cannot negotiate an exchange on site that day in their presence, and you have a deposit slip with the USD in your account, do not give them your currency, period. That's just my personal view. That's what I'm going to do. When I walk, I'm going to try, not only for myself personally, but our firm is trying to negotiate reduced fees by saying, look, we have thousands of clients that have our trusts. Well, on the basis of that, will you be willing to grant us a reduction in the transactions cost for the exchange? I'm not even going to ask for a preferential rate. Can you just give us transactions cost if they come and present one of our trusts? But I'm not giving my currencies to anyone if I do not get an exchange for that, a deposit slip with the USD in there. And if I want to walk out with $5,000, I want to walk out with $5,000. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly what happens so that we can contact these people. The problem we have on our end is until at least the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar happens in country, I have no leverage to negotiate anything with any bank. But after the reinstitution occurs, I can call up and say, this is Trusts Unlimited. We have X thousands of clients that have trust with us. They have approximately X amount of dinar. The currency has now reinstituted in country. What can you do for us? And we're going to be talking to the other banks. So that's where we are.
Well, that's good. I didn't think about that, but the point would be then don't go off too quickly, that we should wait to hear from you or some kind of communication as to whether or not that negotiated rate has been accomplished.
Well, the other way the analogy I like to make is if you buy a car and say, oh, gee, I want to buy a car, so I'm going to walk into the first dealer I go by. I'm going to buy the first car that I see. I'm not going to negotiate a price. No, you decide, well, you know what? There's 3 or 4 different cars I like. I'm going to go in and say, look, I'm interested in buying this car, but I'm also looking at this car and this car. I just want your best price. I'm not going to nickel and dime you. I'm not going to be back and forth. Just give me your best shot. And I'm going to try to accomplish that immediately. And again, I can hopefully get that done when they reinstitute, because the reinstitution is not the global revaluation. So when the reinstitution happens, I can credibly go to them if they know what they're talking about and say, look, this is going to pop soon. They've reinstituted in country. So I'm trying to get a heads up on what we can expect from you, because that will determine where we go when it happens.
So if you do that with Bank X, you could notify the trust holders that Bank X.
Yeah, I mean, what I would do is let's say that hypothetically they say, okay, Tier 1 and Tier 2 banks will be involved because they're the only banks that can handle this magnitude of business. So I go to a couple of Tier 1 banks and a couple of Tier 2 banks. I basically explain who we are, what we're trying to accomplish. I get from them in writing some deal that they're willing to work out, and we simply inform you of that. Then you decide if you want to take that advice. You go to the bank, you negotiate whatever you negotiate, and Good. It is what it is.
All right. Well, it's been very helpful today. Thank you so much, and for all your efforts. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. Got to be less.
Yes. Good morning. Almost afternoon for us here. No, good afternoon to you, too.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost 1 o'clock here. It's a long call today.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
What can I do for you today, Les?
Two of my questions were answered already, but I just wanted to highlight one, but I got 2 questions. Where Trump said last night that the U.S. produces more oil. So was he speaking? He says more oil than anyone else. Was he speaking about the credit that we'll get from the Iraqi dinar, the oil credit?
No, all he was basically saying was that the United States is once again a net exporter of oil, but we are now also the largest producer of oil, large country producing the largest amount of oil, and that doesn't even count our massive amounts of natural gas. Now that does have a downward effect on the price of a barrel of oil.
That was good?
But that's good. It's good. It's kind of complicated. It's bad for businesses that rely on the profit margin, but it's good for the consumer. Economics is the study of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So in 2 of the sectors, it's very good. The distribution and consumption, those sectors are going to just take off as the price of a barrel of oil drops. So that's a good thing. Now, it's true that companies that sell the oil have less of a profit, but again, that can be offset by increased volume. When the price of a product goes down, people purchase more of it. So it's a net gain for everybody. I know that the Democrats sat on their hands and didn't applaud that because they're all about their new Green Deal. But my answer to them is simple. Until you can produce a solar-powered 747, I'm not interested.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's where we are. That's where we are.
Okay. All right. So as far as us starting, will it be a staggered start, or will everyone start at the same time, more or less within the same 5 minutes?
You mean to exchange?
To exchange, yes.
Well, I mean, once the reval, it's just a matter of when the banks open their doors and say, okay, our currency department is now exchanging dinar. Now, let's say the IMF takes the dinar out of the program rate. Well, any bank if you snooze, you lose. So obviously they're going to want to be up and running as quickly as possible. Now, over the years, we've heard the gurus repeatedly say, "Oh, they've got the staff in there. They're getting ready. They're preparing. They're going through the process." These people know how to do an exchange. I mean, admittedly, and the currencies here, we're talking a lot more zeros. But they're not discussing with them how to conduct an exchange. What they're discussing with them are all of the bells and whistles they're going to throw at you to try to get you to keep their money in their bank and preferably in one of their institutional trusts. That's what they're being schooled about. Now, when the reinstitution happens, that gives the banks a heads up. Okay, let's get ready because we're going to open our doors, and that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that sounds more logical than, they're training them, and you already know numbers.
Yeah,
you're hired. You're working at a bank.
They know how to do an exchange. This is about keeping the money in their bank. Now, one of the things that they'll probably try to do is put a hold on the money, 21-day hold or whatever, so they can at least work the float. Now, the way the banking rules work, they theoretically can't do that. So if they come to me and say, we're going to do your exchange, I'm going to ask them, well, okay, when will my money be available? If they start stuttering or tell me 21 days or something, I'll just say, sorry, that's not going to fly with me. You're not playing with my money for 21 days. If I want to take all my money out in 5 days, that's that. So, But again, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the Treasury Department could stipulate that the money must be held at the bank for a certain amount of time. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. But theoretically, the only time a bank can hold money beyond what the banking regulations require is if they give you a deposit slip to hold it for longer, which they must inform you, and you accept that. So, we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Great. Thanks for that. And last question. Now, there were 3 countries. You named France, Germany, and a third country that will do business with Iran. What was
England.
England. Okay. So if they happen to do business with Iran anyway, they can't use the U.S. dollar as part of their trade. How will they?
Well, they want to use they can trade using the euro with Iran. It's just that the U.S. most countries use the dollar. Even some of the European nations use the dollar. It's just because it's a simpler transaction. What the Europeans are doing is they're trying to take advantage of the United States by saying, well, since the U.S. is trying to put a box around Iran, we're going to circumvent it so we can get the euro. They're basically trying to stick it to the United States because we're beating them like a drum economically. And because they don't like Trump coming along and saying, hey, knock off this nonsense that you're doing, pay your fair share to NATO, stop doing business with Iran and these other countries. Don't buy Russian oil. All Russia is a gas station. 90% of Russia's revenue comes from the sale of oil. And by the way, by making us the largest producer of oil, this is what Reagan did. He increased oil production, which reduced the price of a barrel globally, which made it impossible for Russia to be able to fund their military to keep pace with us. That's essentially what Trump's doing. We're reducing the price of a barrel of oil. We're increasing our expenditures for the military. Russia can't keep up with that.
Great call. Very informative today. I'm going to have to listen to the replay. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Take care, my friend.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I hope it was informative, and I sincerely hope that those of you that have currencies, if have not as yet gotten your affairs in order or have not investigated the necessity of establishing your trusts pre-RV, will contact us. We'll be happy to send you our initial obligation-free package. You can review it. If you decide to proceed, everything you need is included in the package. If you have any questions, you're welcome to contact us. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. There will be no consultation fee. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get an emergency email out and schedule an emergency conference call. Failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, everyone, and thanks again for listening. Bye-bye.